This bill eliminates the current requirement that a marriage be officiated by either a magistrate or an ordained minister. The current standards are weakened to permit anyone to officiate a wedding who is 18 years of age or older. Of all the bills that get passed in this lame duck session, this will not be the most consequential by any stretch of the imagination. The practical reason why I am opposed to this bill is that the lowering of standards will increase the probability of administrative mistakes, which will be a massive headache for the married couple and for the local clerks. That being said, it's worthwhile to take a second and reflect on the bigger picture of what is going on with the institution of marriage as a whole. This bill signifies yet another step in the weakening of marriage and the removal of any standards that are associated with it. For example, take another bill that was passed earlier this year. When I tell someone that a person can now become a legal parent in Michigan without being biologically related, married to the mother, or even going through the adoption process, they find it hard to believe. It's as if they think I'm being some type of alarmist when I say a person can be a parent by holding out a child as their own for any period of time within the child's first 2 years of life. Some may ask what the change to parentage has to do with marriage. To them, I say everything. The main purpose of marriage is to produce children and to raise them together in a stable, loving home. Of course, that is not the only reason. People do get married who cannot have children. But that does not negate the fact that children are the primary fruits that come from marriage as a whole. So what happens when a bill like this weakens the solemnity of the marital union? It becomes like a regular event. It loses some of its significance. I thank God that I have not been closely affected by divorce. I have been married for over 14 years, and my parents have been married for over 51 years. But I have seen the devastating effects that divorce has on everyone involved, and this is especially tragic for children. Again, this bill is not the most significant we will see before the term is over, but it symbolizes a much larger trend. It signifies the erosion and elimination of any type of standard when it comes to the marital union. This is significant because the family is the bedrock of society as a whole, and the weakening of this foundation will have broader implications. I urge a no vote. I have given a great deal of thought to Senate Bills 1083 through 1085, which would decriminalize adultery in the state of Michigan. Honestly, before seeing these bills, I didn't know adultery was a crime. The way the current law works, if one spouse commits adultery, the other spouse can ask the prosecutor to pursue charges. A prosecutor cannot pursue charges without this consent. It is not as if law enforcement officers are out on the streets pursuing violators of the Adultery Act. If someone were to be convicted, it would be a Class H felony. I could not find a single instance of this as a charge or conviction of this adultery law. To say the least, I have been very conflicted in trying to decide to be a yes or no on this bill. From a personal faith perspective, this is as significant of a bill as we could consider. The law on adultery has its roots from Mount Sinai, and it was confirmed and strengthened at the Sermon on the Mount. That being said, while considering how this bill weighs on my conscience, which is important, it's not all that I can consider for a bill of this nature. When trying to set civil laws, I have to base my decisions on if there's a compelling state interest. When looking at adultery, it is clear that it greatly hurts everyone involved. It hurts the two committing the act, it hurts the offended spouse, and most importantly, and this is where I think there is a compelling state interest, it hurts the children. I have had friends confide in me before that one of their parents committed adultery when they were a child. To put it mildly, it was a completely devastating moment in their lives. And it is clearly a wound that hurts for the remainder of their lives. When thinking of how to vote on these bills, their sentiments are at the forefront of my mind. Our society is a reflection of its individuals, and the state should advocate for policies that keeps the family structure healthy. There is an ideology propagated today that anything that deals with sexuality should not be dealt with in civil law. If this type of ideology fully takes hold, it would end in the elimination of any type of standard within a society which would have disastrous consequences for both the individual and society as a whole. Some would argue that Since this bill is not being enforced, it is not needed. I would argue that eliminating the standard is not the solution. In trying to sort out where I would land voting on this bill, I found I could definitely support lowering the penalty to a civil infraction, again with the understanding that it could only be pursued if the spouse wants the criminal charges. There is a precedent for this approach because penalties have changed in this act over time. We charge a civil infraction for much less serious offenses like smoking marijuana in public or even failing to report a deer harvest. Another thing I cannot help but consider is that these bills are not only run in lame duck, they were introduced after the election. When something of this sensitivity is hidden, it cannot help but indicate that there is some level of shame associated with these bills. Can anyone in here today among us stand up and defend adultery? No, it is an inherent evil. Some evils that are deeply moral we cannot legislate, and some we can. The test I apply when trying to separate these issues is if there is a compelling state interest. I think there is a compelling state interest here, and I urge a no vote.